This video was produced based on an article by Lingshan Hermit. All rights reserved. Any infringement will be prosecuted. Within the educational system we received, traditional Chinese culture has always existed as an object of backwardness to be criticized. Throughout the years of our upbringing, textbooks, magazines, the internet, and television have constantly told us, traditional Chinese culture did not invent the telephone, did not invent the internal combustion engine, did not invent antibiotics, nor did it discover graphene or electromagnetic theory. Therefore, it made no contribution whatsoever to world civilization. We did not have Einstein, nor Alexander Fleming. We did not have Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. All we had was Huangzi and Confucius, who merely talked grandly and emptily, and Shan masters whose words no one understood. Their theories were of no use for programming or for curing AIDS. Over the past 200 or 300 years, this has almost become the shared understanding of all those who received a modern education and considered themselves intelligent and cultured. Because those who controlled discourse kept telling us this, and because those whom we regarded as the smartest human elites also believed it, we never doubted it. Until very recent years, this understanding continued to rule the minds of most people, with no sign of loosening. But we have also noticed some positive signs. In the early 2020s, the Indian government quietly removed the theory of evolution from its textbooks. They said that they had never seen monkeys turning into human beings. This may be regarded as a symbol of progress. It means that the mistaken cognition that has ruled our minds for several hundred years has finally shown a tiny crack. As the birthplace of the Buddha Dharma, India has always been a country that interests me. In India, a considerable proportion of the population has always believed in the existence of gods. They bathe, pray, and wash clothes in the Ganges. These citizens who believe in the existence of deities regard miraculous events in history that surpass modern people's cognition as historical events that truly occurred. For instance, the Hindu deity Krishna once lifted Mount Govardhan on his finger. Most other countries, however, long ago began treating such histories as absurd myths. For example, you may try solemnly telling an American that Jesus fed more than 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and then observe their expression. This puts India at the forefront. In the 2020s, the American government began, shyly and half openly, to acknowledge the existence of extraterrestrial life. They released some evidence for the existence of unidentified flying objects. This matter shook the knowledge system of most people, who had always been taught that we are the only intelligent civilized beings in the universe. Now they will have to face the cruel reality that they may merely be one civilization among millions on hundreds of billions of planets in the Milky Way. This has left their value system somewhat unable to bear the strain. One subsequent effect of this event is that some intelligent people have begun to re-examine the knowledge system they had previously acquired. This should be said to be not a bad thing. I must make clear that I have never been one of these people. I have never believed that human beings evolved from monkeys. Compared with monkeys, I would rather believe that humans were transformed from cats or lunchboxes. My friends all know that I have always been a staunch supporter of traditional Chinese culture, and I have always believed that modern technological civilization is far from sufficient to understand the value of traditional Chinese culture. I have never thought that modern technological civilization has reduced human suffering. Yes, the emergence of electricity has reduced the suffering of climbing stairs and crossing mountains. It allows us to video chat with relatives 10,000 miles away. But at the same time, it has also made us endure sufferings greater, longer lasting, and more far-reaching than climbing stairs. In order to live a life with automatic dishwashers and egg beaters, we often have no choice but to lick other people's toes. I once saw a passage by Max Weber concerning Confucianism. He said, Confucianism is not a practical learning, but merely a whole set of values for maintaining social order. Schools teach neither mathematics nor natural science nor geography, and the people they cultivate have no capacity for logical creativity. This passage interested me greatly, and it gave rise in me to an impulse to discuss the value of Confucianism with him. In a certain sense, I greatly admire Max Weber's insight. Confucianism is indeed a whole set of values for maintaining social order. If we speak from the perspective of how most people understand Confucianism and how rulers position Confucianism, what follows is also described very accurately. Confucianism indeed does not teach natural science and geography. In fact, it is not only Confucianism. Among the three traditions of Chinese traditional culture, Buddhism, Daoism, and Confucianism, none teaches natural science or geography. Chinese Chan masters and Daoist priests sit in meditation and recite scriptures all day long, while great Confucian scholars merely speak grandly. From the outside, they do indeed seem to have done nothing. Therefore, from the perspective of people like Max Weber, they truly had no creative capacity and made no contribution to the progress of civilization. They did not discover electromagnetic induction like Michael Faraday. They did not invent wireless charging, nor did they invent instant noodles. Their contribution to social progress may not even match that of coal miners. This is not merely Max Weber's understanding. It is also the understanding of most people in the world today. It is also the fundamental reason why some Chinese women feel that even darker-skinned people are superior to Chinese people. But did Confucianism truly make no contribution? Of course not. I do not know whether you usually watch movies and television dramas. I once asked some practitioners about this. Some of them do not watch them, perhaps out of fear that they will affect their practice, but I do. Apart from practice and writing, I watch some movies and television dramas. I have also collected many Blu-ray discs. To me, these movies are in fact very good textbooks. They have always been showing us the importance of the Buddha and traditional Chinese culture. They have also always been telling us that traditional Chinese culture is correct. Recently, I watched a very popular television drama called The Long Season. This drama tells a story set in northern China from the late 1990s to the first decade or so of the 21st century. I believe the most important value of this drama lies in how it shows us the importance of Confucian culture. In the late 1990s, the female protagonist in the drama was still in university. She probably needed some money, so she went to a nightclub to play piano. As in most vulgar stories of this kind, she was noticed by a wealthy businessman. Through one of her close female friends, the businessman used despicable means to drug and violate her. I do not need to describe the later developments. Everyone should already know. She killed the wealthy businessman, triggering a series of consequences and ruining many people's lives. What I want to say is this: if she had been a woman deeply nurtured by Confucian culture, she would not have gone to such a place to play piano. If you need to make a living, there are many ways to do so. If she had not gone to such a place to play piano, she would not have been seen by the wealthy businessman, would not have been drugged and violated, and the subsequent series of tragedies would not have happened. Her life would not have become so terrible, and she would not have dragged so many people into misfortune with her. The Chinese sages said, "A gentleman does not stand beneath a dangerous wall." As a woman, you should of course avoid such places of trouble. You cannot change the world, but at the very least you can keep yourself away from danger. You can avoid giving others the opportunity to harm you, reducing such possibilities to the lowest degree. But clearly, the female protagonist in this drama had not received this kind of traditional education. Her whole person radiated the kind of foolish confidence that I often see in certain people. She is the kind of person who thinks she can wade through a swamp without getting even a drop of water on herself. She is the kind of person who insists on putting her finger next to a tiger's mouth, and after being bitten, still cries out that she has been wronged. Therefore, she had to endure the devastation of fate. So I was thinking, if Max Weber had the opportunity to watch this drama, would he still think Confucian culture was unimportant? Would he still think that merely studying natural science would be enough to win at life? I have met many people who studied natural science and geography. They possess abundant knowledge and reasoning ability, and some among them do not lack creativity. But they did not receive a Confucian education, so they do not understand the methods and order of human conduct and action. They do not understand their own position. This creates obstruction after obstruction for them. Many of their lives are ruined in precisely this way. Therefore, people who possess this culture and people who lack this culture experience two completely different lives. I would also like to cite a famous American television drama, Game of Thrones. I believe what this drama shows is how Westerners without Confucian culture play themselves to death. The two queens in Game of Thrones, Cersei of House Lannister and Daenerys Targaryen of House Targaryen, do not lack political maneuvering, but they do not understand Confucian culture. This made their endings tragic. If they had understood even a little Confucian culture, if they had been born in an environment shaped by Confucian culture, their lives would have been completely different. If Cersei had honored the agreement she reached with the Northern Alliance at the Dragonpit meeting and sent troops north to fight the White Walkers, if she had recognized reality and accepted that King's Landing was about to fall and that she was about to fail, if she had surrendered to the Dragon Queen instead of indulging in a moment of satisfaction by killing one of the Dragon Queen's dragons and then beheading her most important friend alive before her eyes, if she had not done these things, she would have had a different life. I believe the Dragon Queen, in order to display her own magnanimity, would have been pleased to spare her life. But Cersei did these things. She blocked every path for herself. She remained hardline to the end, and so she died miserably. The difference between Western culture and Chinese culture is that Western culture is a culture of strength. Westerners find it very difficult to accept failure. They always want to overwhelm others. Chinese culture, by contrast, emphasizes the ability to bend and stretch. As for Queen Daenerys Targaryen, this favored daughter of heaven spent most of her life as though she were playing with cheat codes enabled. Her greatest mistake lay in this. After Jon Snow's true identity had already been made known to the world, that he was the only male heir of House Targaryen, she still refused to step behind the curtain and become a queen consort. She still wanted to continue being king. She was unwilling to become an appendage to a man, unwilling to become the background, unwilling to stand outside the central position, unwilling to become a woman who assists her husband and teaches her children. Although she loved Snow, she was unwilling to sacrifice for him. This gave many people a pretext to attack her, and it was also an important reason for her final tragedy. On this point, she was as foolish as her ancestor Princess Rhaenyra centuries earlier. That strong-willed princess also triggered a war because she refused to yield to a male heir with stronger legitimacy than herself, her younger brother Aegon. In the end, she lost the war and died in the mouth of a dragon. In my view, whether Cersei, Daenerys, or Rhaenyra, they all need to take responsibility for what happened to them. Their misfortunes were self-inflicted. They were born into such a culture and had absolutely no idea of their own position. Their evaluation of themselves far exceeded their actual capacity. They did not understand retreat, nor did they understand compromise. This made their eventual misfortune impossible to avoid. All of this was caused by a lack of Confucian education. So, after seeing all this, would Max Weber still think Confucian culture unimportant? If we speak of inventions and creations, these are the inventions and creations of traditional Chinese culture, and its contribution to the world. Possessing these treasures will make your life completely different. They are things that Western culture does not possess at all. The thinking patterns of modern people make it rather difficult for them to understand why a correct idea can be more efficient than Office 365. But this is a fact, because first you have to be alive before you can even talk about efficiency. Westerners invented the drum washing machine, the modern financial system, credit cards, electric cars, and air conditioners. But they did not invent a culture that says, how can life contain so much fulfillment? In all things, seek only half satisfaction. They did not discover that all things are empty. They did not discover that all our suffering arises from mistaken cognition of the world. They pour all their energy into inventing various external tools to resist and prevent suffering, but the results are not very impressive. The emergence of escalators and airplanes has merely made human beings walk a little less. But these inventions of traditional Chinese culture can make your life fundamentally different. Over the years, I have personally witnessed many people fall into the abyss. I have personally seen many people walk onto the road of destruction because they did not understand Confucian culture. The fundamental reason for their failure was that they did not know, and did not possess, Confucian ideas. Whether mobile phones, personal computers, shower heads, or vitamins, to some degree they have indeed improved and facilitated our lives. But such improvements cannot be mentioned in the same breath as the influence of traditional Chinese culture on your life. The convenience provided by modern technological products is only a tiny convenience. What traditional culture provides is ultimate convenience. Moreover, according to my observation, the influence of the internet on most people's lives at present appears to be more bad than good, because most people do not possess the ability to discern. Amid the massive sea of information, they often accept precisely the kind of information that will negatively affect the direction of their lives. Yet they are completely unaware of this. Most modern people believe they live in a world where information flows freely. They feel they are thinking independently and making independent judgments. Toward this, I can only smile. The most powerful form of mind driving in this world is to make you feel that your thoughts are your own, that they are conclusions you reached through rational analysis, that they are rational conclusions formed after reading many books, watching many movies, traveling to many places, experiencing many things, and understanding many sides of an issue. I have almost never seen anyone who can jump out of this enormous pit. Whether they are intellectuals who worship yellow-haired people, or most yellow-haired people themselves. I would also like to mention another television drama I have been watching recently, Love and Death. Not the famous Love, Death and Robots, but Love and Death, a new work from 2023, starring Elizabeth Olsen and Jesse Plemons. This series has not yet finished airing. It tells the story of a murder case that occurred in Texas in the United States in the 1980s. The female protagonist Candy and the male protagonist Alan are neighbors and fellow churchgoers. They live in the same neighborhood, attend the same church, and are both married, each with their own family and children. Because of an accidental physical contact on a tennis court, feelings arise between them. One night, after a church activity, Candy says to Alan that she wants to talk to him. They get into Alan's car together, and in the car she asks him, "Would you consider having an affair?" Alan's initial reaction is shock and disbelief, but after hesitating for a few days, he cautiously accepts Candy's suggestion. Clearly, however, he still has many misgivings. In order to carry out their affair more safely, they formulate detailed plans and thorough precautions. They even hold many meetings. They agree that if either of them develops feelings and dependence toward the other, that will be the moment when they say goodbye. They believe that although the two of them are about to begin an affair, they absolutely must not harm each other's families and children. They only want to have some fun and do not want emotions involved. If they detect any sign of this, they should terminate it immediately. This reminds me of a popular phrase: be greedy for money with principle. Indulge lust with restraint. Enter the body but not the life. But greed for money will not have principle. Lust will not have restraint. And entering the body is entering the life. Although Candy and Alan made all kinds of plans and countermeasures, clearly the direction of this world was not something they could control. The world has always gone its own way. They could not even control their own feelings, so they did not seriously follow the rules they themselves had made. The development of events slowly exceeded their control. The turning point came 2 years after their affair began. It was a morning in June 1980. Alan's wife Betty had long since sensed the unusual relationship between the two of them, but she had not made it public. She had simply observed silently from the side. That morning, Candy drove to Alan's house to pick up some clothing belonging to Betty's daughter. Because Candy was helping take care of Betty's daughter, only Betty was at home. Alan was away on business. While the two women were drinking coffee and chatting, Betty could no longer hold back and brought up the matter to Candy. She wanted to confirm whether her intuition was correct. After receiving Candy's affirmative answer, she flew into a rage. Then the two came into conflict. The ending was that Candy Montgomery killed her lover's wife with an axe. This later became one of the most influential murder cases in America in the 1980s. Love and death shows our lack of understanding of cause, condition, and effect. Because we do not understand them, we think we can control our emotions, control the direction of the future, and control the other person. But in fact, we can control nothing. It is not only love and death. All well-made movies and television dramas are showing us our lack of understanding of cause, condition, and effect. We are so reckless that we actually think we can control the situation. We think that as long as we do this or that result will follow. This is truly foolish to the extreme. Imagine if they had all been believers in Confucian culture. Imagine if Betty and Candy Montgomery had both been disciples of Confucius. Their tragedy could to a large extent have been avoided. As the victim, Alan's wife Betty was a neurotic woman. She was also a spoiled person who could not tolerate any discomfort. She could even take her husband's silence as an offense. Herself had fluttered in that household like a banner in the wind and had never encountered any obstruction. Therefore, she found it very difficult to accept that her husband had a lover behind her back. If she had been a woman formed by traditional Chinese culture, after already knowing about this matter and after the other party had already promised not to meet her husband again, it is hard to imagine that she would still have rushed out holding an axe, wanting to hack the other woman to death, especially when she herself was pregnant at the time. It was precisely because the culture she grew up in contained no element of forbearance, precisely because herself had never met any obstruction, that she died so miserably. In the past, when people praised Americans, they said that Americans all had faces that looked as though they had never been bullied. 20 years ago, I too would have thought this was a good thing. But now, I am not so sure. Sometimes I think, if she had suffered some bullying, if her growth had not been so smooth, perhaps she would have possessed some capacity for endurance. Then her ending might not have been lying dead in a laundry room. What intellectual circles have always criticized in Confucian society is the oppression of women by a male society. In my view, this so-called oppression was to a large extent a kind of protection, just as precepts appear to bind your hands and feet, but in fact protect you. Without these oppressions, many women can indeed very easily be spoiled. They can very easily misjudge themselves, very easily go astray, and very easily meet tragedy as a result. I do not think indulging a person's self is a good thing, just as I do not think it is a good thing that many parents today never scold or strike their children and obey their every word. Having spoken about the male protagonist's wife Betty, let us now speak of the female protagonist Candy Montgomery, played by Elizabeth Olsen. Candy Montgomery is in fact also someone who had been spoiled. She had childhood trauma, and what she most could not tolerate was being shushed. Judging from the drama, she had in fact long been harboring a fire toward Betty, because her feelings for Alan had long exceeded her own expectations. Alan and Betty often displayed intimacy in front of her, and this left her at a loss. She did not know that she had actually hated Betty for a very long time. So, when two spoiled people, two people unable to endure grievance, two people who hated each other, met in the laundry room, one holding an axe in burning rage and wanting to hack to death the person who had slept with her husband, the other thinking, I have already promised not to see your husband again, and yet you still do this. This is far too much. Rather than I die, you die. When all these conditions came together, tragedy naturally occurred. If we were to continue, I could cite still more examples. For instance, Breaking Bad, which you all know the story of Walter and Jesse. Unlike what many of you may think, I believe Walter White and his brother-in-law Hank died to a large extent because of their wives. I am not saying that they themselves bore no responsibility. Of course they bore responsibility, but their wives contributed greatly to their deaths. They are the kind of women who are completely unable to consider things for men. They are the kind of women who do not trust their husbands. They are the kind of women who, after suffering a little grievance, must take revenge. They are the kind of women who push their husbands into the fire pit. Of course, they themselves do not think so, and the audience may not think so either. They may feel that they are upholding justice. But I suggest that after you finish reading my article, you go back and carefully watch again what they actually did. Those accustomed to refuting may say that these are all movies and television dramas. They are not real life. Of course these are all movies and television dramas. But if you respect facts and possess the ability to observe, you can actually see even more living examples in life. Those screenwriters and directors who live in the Anglo-Saxon cultural sphere grew up on fries and cola. They have no Confucian cultural background whatsoever, nor do they intend to present to the world the consequences of the absence of Confucian culture. In fact, what they intend to do may be precisely the opposite. They are simply filming human social life as it is. What they film looks exactly like this, and it presents to us a certain relative reality. Over these years I have witnessed many people succeed, and I have also witnessed many people fail. Those who failed could originally have lived very well, and could originally have practiced very well, had they not been born in places lacking traditional culture. In them I saw the consequences of not knowing one's own position, the consequences of not knowing one's own ability, the consequences of not knowing how to retreat, the consequences of not being able to endure, and how people without Confucian culture destroy themselves. I saw how people without Confucian culture ruin a good hand and push themselves into desperate situations, just as I saw in Game of Thrones, in Love and Death, and in The Long Season, because they lack these forms of common sense necessary for human survival. Their lives and their practice are all destroyed by their own hands. All of this is caused by the absence of Confucian culture. Within traditional culture, Confucian culture has always been regarded as the most foundational teaching. It has been regarded as a step leading toward higher practice. In fact, it is not only the wisdom necessary for normal human survival, but also wisdom necessary for spiritual practice. Whether you want to open a convenience store or become a Buddha, you cannot leave it behind. Of course, you may say that Jeff Bezos never studied Confucian culture and still managed to run Amazon very well. That only means you have seen only appearances and temporary prosperity. Just as many people think Bill Gates succeeded merely because of his genius and hard work. I have always struck the table in admiration of traditional Chinese culture. The deeper my practice becomes, and the deeper my understanding becomes, the more I know its greatness. I have no intention of blaming those who believe Chinese culture to be worthless, because they were born in such an era. It was impossible for them not to think this way. Many people lack vast vision and wisdom, and are easily swayed by others' views. Therefore, they cannot see how many disasters traditional Chinese culture helped their ancestors avoid. Nor can they see the life trajectories of those lacking Chinese culture. They cannot see what those people have experienced, what they are about to experience, and the deep reasons for their misfortune. But now, perhaps, they can see a little. The world has in fact always been silently showing us these things. So, do you still think that those monks, Chan masters, Daoist priests, and Confucian scholar officials made no contribution to the world? The value they offered to you far surpasses landing on Mars, far surpasses the laws of thermodynamics, far surpasses the internet and intermittent fasting. Because of it, you may avoid the fate of being hacked by knife or axe. In recent years there has been a popular term, emotional value. It is often used to define the value of a man or a woman. If making you feel pleased is called having emotional value, then what value should we call something that allows you to avoid the tragic fate of being hacked by knife or axe? So do not continue feeling inferior because the ancient Chinese did not make the internal combustion engine, did not invent disposable diapers, and did not invent ChatGPT. What they provided is the most precious thing. Ideas that have a major influence on the choices of your life. The enormous difference between Eastern and Western civilizations arises from the fact that they are two completely different roads walked out by two completely different kinds of ideas. One seeks inwardly, and the other seeks outwardly. One conquers oneself, and the other conquers others. But whether one seeks inwardly or outwardly, whether one invents Coca-Cola vending machines or invents do not impose on others what you yourself do not desire, the purpose is to lead us away from suffering and toward happiness.